Okay, Stan, so you brought me out here in the basement of an old crack house. It's now a multimedia community center in Ebenezer Coffee House to talk about the virtues of gentrification.
Gentrification, yeah. You know, I mean, there's cranes up all over this city. It's economic development is happening.
It's displacement, Stan.
Yeah, but, you know, there's new retail places, more jobs for people. It's urban renewal.
Urban renewal is urban removal. I mean, my grandmother herself lost her house because she couldn't keep up property tax. But, you know, I guess there's nothing, you know, unusual about settlers displacing the natives.
Yeah, we heard about that earlier tonight. I mean, and Gabe Lyons said, and I think we'll take his advice, that we should sit down and have a conversation, talk about it.
All right. So basically, Stan, the rent is just too damn high.
It's going to be a tough crowd down here. You know, the city council passed a law. They passed a law a few years ago called inclusionary zoning. And they require a developer like me, if you're building a project and it's more than a certain size, you have to provide 8% of the units in that project. They have to be set aside to be affordable to people that make less than 80% of the area median income. So, I mean, in a sense, the city's got a policy that's to deal with this problem of the rent.
Well, but see, therein lies the problem. It's the way affordable housing is computed. I mean, affordable housing is like it's just a blanket term. I mean, $1 million house is affordable to somebody. Yeah. So when so when you take, you know, a city such as D.C. with one of the greatest disparities in wealth in the entire country, and you take the highest income and the lowest income and pull a number in the middle as if that's fair, that's a disservice to everyone that's 50% and below. I mean,
yeah, I mean, we think about, you know, like you said, for the median income's $100,000 for a household. So we pay our rent, you know, sort of based on household income. And I think we like to think about that bell-shaped curve, and we're all sort of packed around the middle. But we've got you know, a lot of people at the low end. We've got a lot of people at the high end. It's like the middle sort of gotten sucked out of the city over the years. There's been no doubt about that.
So, I mean, basically, we have a situation where working people can't afford to live in the city. I mean, I think it's something like 53% of all the D.C. government employees can afford to live in the city.
Yeah.
The average rent being $1,600 a month. That means if you was paying what the federal, I wish it was a mandate, but the federal guideline is that you pay 30% of your income in housing. I mean, I pay more than 30% of income in housing. How many of y'all pay more than 30% of your income in housing?
Yeah, I mean, we were over it. We were over it. The lights are too bright for me to see, but we were over at your studio last week, and we were looking up the facts, and the facts are startling. I mean, I think the number I had to write it down was 51,000 households in the city. 1/5 of all the households in the city right now pay more than 50% of their income in their housing, you know, and they say you've got that, you know, most of the people are at the low end of that spectrum, you know, that are paying 50%, but that's creeping up. And you talk about the, you know, district employees. More and more district employees can't afford to live in the city because the rent is too high.
So if you're paying, the average rent is $1,600 some change a month. That's average. And you were to be paying 30% of your income. Based on that number alone, you would have to be making over $60,000, $70,000 just to afford to live in this city.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. Therein lies the problem. There's nothing in the middle. And what we need to do is sanitize the language of affordable housing, maybe create workforce housing.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's what we need to be working towards. But at the same time, we don't see, you know, any movement on this. I mean, the government kind of tends to drive this, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the policy is, as I said, we've got these disparate income levels. But if I own a piece of property in a neighborhood, in a good neighborhood, you know, a neighborhood with great retail, with a place like Ebenezer's Coffee House around the corner, and everybody wants to live there. If I own real estate there, I mean, the incentive for me is to make that real estate as valuable as possible. I build the fanciest apartments. I put in the granite countertops, stainless appliances. I really just drive the value up. and I make more money that way. That's my incentive. I'm supposed to make money for my investors. But if I own a piece of property in a so-called bad neighborhood, in a low-income neighborhood, we spend a lot of our time in Anacostia. I own property there, and the incentive for me to make that property as valuable as possible is to go after some of those government incentives to do low-income housing that's got tax credits, and it's got Section 8 vouchers, and it's got things that sort of make that more valuable for me. And so you end up sort of exacerbating that problem. We've got high-end neighborhoods and we've got low-end neighborhoods. We've got concentrations of poverty and we've got concentrations of wealth. We don't have community.
The greatest disparity of wealth in the country right here in the nation's capital. So what we have is a lack of conscious capitalism in terms of how we're doing business in the city. Yeah. And you just said, or the city is giving tax incentives, sometimes in terms of 10 years tax exemption for large-scale businesses to be relocated here, there, and also bringing high-end, high-salary employees with them, driving up the median income, I would say.
Yeah.
And then you have, as you just said, government programs that cater to the low income. But there's nothing in the middle for the working guys. And therein lies the problem. There's, for the existing residents, for the existing small businesses, they don't get any tax breaks. Their property tax continue to go up, and that is kind of like function as like a modern-day red line districting.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, there's no doubt that the policy needs to change if we want to incentivize landowners, we want to incentivize developers. We probably need to change some policy and start to look at ways that we can subsidize, maybe subsidize workforce housing, subsidize those opportunities rather than just subsidizing it at the low end. Maybe we increase that from 8% of inclusionary zoning. Maybe it should be 20%, 25%.
So again, we're trying to embrace some sort of ethics of conscious capitalism. So we make a distinction between community development and economic development. But on a very real level, people moving into the area, the problem is on a personal level. It's kind of like Bill Maher, saying like new rules. So when they move in, rules seem to change.
Yeah, we're not all policy makers, but we all got to be neighbors, right?
Exactly. And I should be able to buy a single beer at a liquor store and not have to get a six-pack like it used to be before you moved here.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Not everybody can afford to go out and go out to a restaurant and buy a bottle of wine and have a nice time with their friends at the end of the week. It's an interesting fact that you brought up to my attention the other day, because I sat on the ABRA board and did that sort of battle against having singles, allowing singles in stores, and hadn't thought about the fact that there's guys that can't afford at the end of their work week to buy a six-pack of beer to take back home. They don't have a home maybe to go to and sit and have that drink with their buddy after they've had a long day, a long, hard week's work.
And our outgoing mayor just had a press conference to talk about quote unquote affordable housing.
He did. He had a press conference on my property yesterday. In fact,
on your property.
to talk about this, and they announced funding for 10,000 new affordable units in the city.
Okay, 10,000 units over how long period of time?
Well, by 2020.
Oh, by 2020.
So 1,000 a month coming in, as long as not very many of them are at the low income level, it should be fine.
He always counting the 1,000 that's coming in every month. He never seems to count how many are leaving every month.
Yeah, well, that's true, and that is why I think it's so important for us to focus on this, so that we can have a community that is much more of that bell-shaped curve and not so much of the two heavy ends and an empty middle.
So what we just want to be clear on is that we are no longer going for the okie doke on what affordable is. What we want to do is have workforce housing. Anyone who works a full-time job should be able to live based upon 30% of their income for that job to live somewhere in that city. That would be workforce housing. That is what we need. And we need to make sure that we do not continue to allow to hear the blanket statement of affordable. We want workforce housing.
We need agreement. We need to work together to make that happen.
Oh, so I can afford to live in one of your properties?
I hope so.
Okay. Stan, you're not a bad guy. Just for the record, my favorite first lady is not Miss Obama. It's actually Eleanor Roosevelt, who has co-signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and she said that housing is a human right.
Amen.